5 True Airport Horror Stories. 1. The Shadow on the Runway. Mark was an experienced airport security officer, having spent nearly a decade patrolling the airfield at the old Brimstone International Airport. He had encountered all kinds of odd occurrences, from lost passengers to malfunctioning alarms, but nothing had prepared him for what he saw one fateful night. It was just past 2 a.m., and Mark was stationed inside the security monitoring room, lazily watching the flickering screens displaying the airport's vast grounds. The night shift was usually quiet, save for the occasional late-night flight. As he sipped his coffee, his eyes caught something unusual on the screen. A shadowy figure stood at the far end of runway 4. Mark frowned. The entire airstrip was supposed to be clear. No flights were scheduled to land or take off for another couple of hours. He squinted at the screen, trying to make out the figure's details, but the CCTV feed was grainy. It looked like a person standing perfectly still, facing the control tower. Thinking it might be a trespasser, Mark grabbed his flashlight and headed out. The wind howled as he stepped onto the cold tarmac. He felt an eerie stillness in the air, as if the entire airport had been swallowed by silence. As he approached the spot where he had seen the figure, his radio crackled to life. "Mark, what are you doing out there?" a voice from the control room asked. "Checking on a trespasser at the end of runway 4, Mark replied. A pause. "Mark, there's no one there. We're looking at the monitors right now." Mark's stomach twisted. He turned his flashlight toward the spot empty. The wind picked up, carrying a whisper that sent a shiver down his spine. He felt watched, an unseen presence looming behind him. Later, he learned the chilling history of runway 4. Years ago, a tragic accident had occurred there. A flight carrying a deceased passenger had landed, but when the coffin was opened, the body was missing. Some believed the soul of the deceased never truly left the runway. 2. The terminal's wailing ghost. In the abandoned wing of Ravenhurst Airport, a legend was whispered among employees, the ghost of a crying child. Terminal B had been closed for over a decade after a devastating accident involving a malfunctioning escalator. A 6-year-old boy had fallen and been crushed beneath the machinery. Since then, no flights operated from that wing, yet every night, security personnel reported hearing faint sobbing coming from within. One night, Sarah, a newly hired airport janitor, was assigned to clean the empty terminal. Unaware of the legends, she grabbed her mop and stepped inside. The flickering overhead lights barely illuminated the dusty corridors. The silence was deafening. Then, she heard a soft, heartbreaking sob. She stopped in her tracks. "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer. The sobbing continued, echoing through the empty space. She cautiously walked toward the sound, her heart pounding. As she turned a corner, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A small, shadowy figure sat at the foot of the escalator, shoulders shaking with grief. "Are you lost?" Sarah whispered, but as she stepped closer, the figure vanished. The sobbing stopped instantly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Terrified, she turned to run but stumbled over something. Looking down, she saw an old, dusty teddy bear lying at her feet. Sarah quit the next morning. 3. The Phantom Passenger. Flight 389 was a routine overnight journey from New York to London. The check-in counters buzzed with activity as passengers handed over their boarding passes. "Next, please," the attendant said, looking up. A frail elderly woman stood before her, dressed in outdated clothes. She handed over a faded boarding pass. The attendant scanned it, but no record of the woman appeared in the system. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but I can't find your ticket in our database. When did you book your flight?" The woman simply smiled. "This flight is my final journey." A chill ran down the attendant's spine. The woman turned and walked away without another word. Security was alerted, but when they checked the surveillance footage, there was no trace of her. She had vanished into thin air. Later that night, one of the pilots overheard the flight attendants discussing the strange encounter. He turned pale and whispered, "Flight 389. That was the number of the plane that crashed 50 years ago." 4. The cursed runway. In an airport built over an ancient burial ground, pilots reported a chilling phenomenon: phantom turbulence. Captain Evans had flown for over 20 years. He was an expert at takeoffs and landings, but one evening, as he prepared to land at the infamous runway 66, something went terribly wrong. As the plane descended, the cockpit instruments flickered. The control tower gave clearance, but Evans felt an unusual resistance. The plane shook violently, as though an unseen force was trying to push it back into the sky. Passengers screamed as oxygen masks dropped. The turbulence was unlike anything Evans had ever experienced. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The landing was smooth, as if nothing had happened. But when Evans stepped out to inspect the aircraft, he noticed something horrifying: giant handprints on the plane's exterior, as if something had tried to hold it in the air. The airport later confirmed that runway 66 was built over a mass grave. Evans never flew there again. 5. The haunted luggage belt. Late one night, an airport baggage handler named Kevin was finishing his shift when he noticed something strange. A lone suitcase circled the conveyor belt, unclaimed. It was an old, battered case, covered in dust. Kevin checked the tags. There were none. Curious, he decided to open it. As soon as he unlatched the case, a freezing gust of air escaped. Inside, neatly folded clothes rested on top of something else, something wrapped in plastic. His breath caught in his throat. Slowly, he pulled back the plastic and recoiled in horror. A mummified hand lay inside, fingers curled as if reaching for help. Kevin stumbled back, his scream echoing through the baggage claim area. When security arrived, the suitcase was gone. There was no sign it had ever existed. To this day, employees whisper about the ghostly luggage that appears on the conveyor belt, waiting for someone to open it again.